Hello, I'm going to talk about a document which is called Enabling the Business Environment of Agriculture, which was published by World Bank in 2019. When we look at the UN 2030 targets, we see some targets such as reduction of poverty, reaching nutritious food, strengthening agri-food value chain, increasing agricultural productivity, increasing resilience to climate change. In theory, everything looks perfect, but in practice, measuring the indicators is quite difficult since every country, even different regions in the same country, can differentiate regarding regulations, culture, and socio-economic factors. We see there is a lack of institutional arrangements or lack of dedications to do that, etc. I think this report is quite valuable for showing us the way where the countries go methodologically. Let me start with the fact addressing many national and international events. This fact shows that the world population is fed by small-scale farmers rather than larger farmers. Small-scale farming is also an important employment tool. Many Asian and African countries challenge with small-scale farming, particularly traditional farming. Statistic refers to 84% of all farms have less than 2 hectares of land for growing crops and livestock. It is estimated that 28% of workforce comes solely from agriculture sector. Agriculture is one of the sectors that you cannot measure the indicators easily and in a reliable way, since there is no standardization, similar regulations or traditional side of agricultural sector. In many less developed countries, the gap between countryside and urban widens against the countryside. In this regard, we need to measure countryside in order to implement the policies in countryside in an effective way. Otherwise, the targets can just stay in the policy documents and the targeted actions will never be realized. The document actually reveals 8 indicators to be measured by countries. Let me sum up these indicators with my experience that I acquired from field. The first indicator is supplying seed. We are now talking about climate change. We severely face the dramatic effects of climate change in many regions. Some regions face serious drought seasons while some face overrain. If there is a perfect market in less developed countries, we clearly see in many places uncertified seeds. We need to encourage certified seed resilience to shocks like climate change. Thanks to the smart agricultural solutions, registering the certified seeds to be sold in local, regional, or international markets is utter importance. The second indicator is fertilizer, which helps farmers to increase their productivity per hectare. But we see traditional farmers might have overuse of fertilizer most of the time, and in some cases they might not know which fertilizer or what amount to be used in their field, since they do not test their soils. Again, precise agriculture need to be adopted by those farmers through the agricultural cooperatives or unions, since it is costly for poor farmers. Moreover, there should be a perfect agricultural extension services to guide for those farmers in less developed countries. The third indicator is securing water. One of the ways to increase the yield is to access water. If the farmers cannot access the water, they prefer to grow crop resilient to drought, and they cannot diversify their crops because of the lack of water. This is related with low value added for poor farmers. This might cause farmers leaving the sector or change their production pattern from field crops to livestock. Water absolutely need to be regulated by national or local governments. We also know that groundwater is intensively used by farmers or agriculture sector in many regions in the world. The NASA shows us in many places in the world there is overuse of groundwater used in agriculture sector. There is thus a severe risk to overuse the groundwater, and also wild watering lead to production losses or soil degradation in the mid-term in many countries. This is a tricky point that needs to be monitored by local authorities. Sometimes arsenic rates, for example, in groundwater used for agricultural purposes, can be high for health and soil. The fourth indicator is registering machinery. In many less developed countries, the rate of agricultural machinery is still too low and unregistered. In general, when we talk about agriculture and mechanization, the first point addressed is the tractors. But there are also significant amount of agricultural machinery is used in agriculture sector. So registering these machines is quite important for measuring the productivity and also provide the essential safety regulations in agricultural sector. The fifth indicator is sustaining livestock. It is related with quality of regulations for manufactured feed and veterinary medicinal products. In general, farmers rely on foraging and grazing to feed their animals, but these resources are also related with weather. In case of drought seasons, they need to turn animal feed products to ensure that their herds receive good nutrition. The small scale of livestock face a serious problem in case of drought seasons, as it is costly to access animal feed products, which might depend on import in many developing countries. The sixth indicator is protecting plant health, which covers quality of phytosanitary regulation. We see here food safety issue. Pests and disease lead to great risk to crops. It is estimated that plant disease destroy 10% of the world's crop harvest. In many less developed country or developing country, the consumers can only aware of pesticide residues when the products to turn back while being imported. So the countries can develop or extend the rapid tools to identify pesticide residues and reporting and quarantining in both harvesting time and also pre-harvesting time. The seventh indicator is trading food. This indicator particularly important for time and cost to obtain documents to trade agricultural goods and the quality of food regulation system. Particularly, individual farmers might not have an opportunity to trade because of some barriers that the countries put for the trade. The last but not least is accessing finance. In many cases, the smaller size of farms, the harder they access finance to credit to invest in production. The bank can ask small farmers to prove the legal right to land. It might not easy for farmers, particularly if they are scattered and divided by inheritance. A warehouse system to be developed in villages or districts is utter importance. Apart from measurable indicators, there are some indicators not measured, such as natural factors affecting the productivity of farmers, such as the type of soil, average temperatures and precipitation levels, the length of the growing season, or the risk of droughts and floods. As a consequence, breeders' rights and licensing third parties, provision on post-control testing of seed, fertilizer import and quality control requirements, machinery standards and import procedures, water abstraction permits and regulation of producer organizations need to be on the agenda of many developing countries.